Welcome to the Vigor Life Podcast, a source of inspiration, lessons, stories, skill sets, mindsets, and strategies to invigorate and expand all areas of your life. Let's go. What's going on? Coach Luka is back with the Vigor Life Podcast, and we're taking it a little bit of a different direction. But, lately I've been loving sharing, I guess, the process of just revelations, insights from leadership, building a team, building a company, and honestly just sharing a lot of stuff that I fucked up in the past and continue to, and just and just share it with you. But having you guys know that I study a lot all the time, almost obsessively. I wouldn't say almost obsessively, it is obsessively, but with that said, it always, of course, as you go through stuff and you make mistakes and you become aware of it, and we've talked about this, going from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, and so on and so forth, right? Just becoming aware and realizing you've been doing something wrong, or it could be done better, and then then the grueling process of changing that, because it is that. It's hilarious to me how sometimes I would say people share these insights, and it's like, oh yeah, man, you figured it out on Friday. On Monday, we're going to be doing this. But it's yeah, sure, if it was robots, if it wasn't the human factor. So, getting, even for yourself, think about how difficult it is to, first of all, realize something is, it's difficult. It's painful to realize something. And then you got to, accept it, yeah, this is reality. Then, I would say, doing the work of change, right? Doing the work of change is hard. Whether it's your body and fitness and eating habits and, obviously your belief systems sometimes that are holding you back from making changes and whatnot, or, helping your team execute something, meaning, going from, okay, we know a better way to, hey, we're implementing a better way to this better way is now consistent. It's now the norm. It's now the standard. That's a big gap. It doesn't happen from Friday to Monday. It doesn't even happen a lot of times from one month to the other, right? It takes time. And so I shared this before, but I wanted to touch on it again as far as what do I believe that the company, or should say a business / organization is there for? And, I would say some people, I had this wrong for a long time. What do I believe now? Well, I believe the deepest purpose of a business is to change the lives of the people who work there, first and foremost, which is a little bit of a different approach than maybe some other people think. And that's okay. But I certainly think that, even when I look at the gym or any other company that I'm a part of, have started or own, that the people there are the most important, because they're going to be, and all of them are service companies, right? They're delivering the service. They're creating the hospitality, the competence of the skill set that's being administered. So that's got to be there. That's got to be the most important part. Number two is the role of leaders and managers is to show people how professional and personal growth are inseparable. So I think that's another thing, right? You come to work and it's oh, this is work. Right. And then there's personal stuff. And hey, you know what? You do your personal stuff by yourself if you want to personally develop. When you're here, you're either going to, you're going to do work or you're going to grow. But it's those two are interchangeable, right? Personal and professional growth go hand in hand. And the role of leaders, leaders, managers, I'll probably use interchangeably. But honestly, I'll just stick to the word leaders more. Is to show people how professional personal growth are inseparable, and also to help them in both of those. And then number three is the way to get people to be engaged is to be more engaged with them. And we talked about that in the last couple of podcasts. You cannot ask for more engagement if you do not engage more yourself. And so these, through my studies, I would say through the last months, I've come across these 5 myths, and as I'm learning these, I'm having all these, I would say, revelations oh man, how long was I doing this wrong? And I'm still in the process of, I would say, overcoming some of these myths, right? Because when they're deeply ingrained for a long time, or that's the way that you operate it takes some time to, to change those things, right? But some people will call these the 5 employee engagement myths. I would just call them the 5 myths that are preventing you from growing your team or helping your team grow so that the team grows, helps you grow the company, right? Like we could use a lot of different taglines. I'm not in a copywriting mood right now. It's all good though. So here's where we'll start. This is a big one. And I've even still caught myself like a couple of years ago, I would say, saying this, but certainly when I get on a call for business strategy sessions or, strategy sessions to join a business coaching program, I get this one a lot. Maybe you do too. And remember, as I'm going through these things, if you don't have a business or you're part of business, if you don't have a business with a team and you're part of an organization, you're part of any team, I believe this is going to be just as important for you to not hear, but also think about, okay? Because it's not just about like leadership and management stuff. It's about teams, because this is a thought process that happens for a lot of people. So imagine if there's a group of people on a team, you might say this exact same thing that I'm about to share. So what is myth number one? I can't find good people. I'm pausing because how often have you heard that, right? Can't find good people. Well, let's look at this, right? You meet good people all the time, right? You've been interviewed and hired them in the past. Certainly, surely. You've seen other companies with good people. So you brought them onto your team, excited, hopeful about the personal qualities and skills that you thought they could add, right? At the beginning, you may be like, oh man, they were great. And then the tunes turn, but that's the thing. And then something happened. After they started working for you, what was it? That's the question. What happened? How did they go from being an exciting new hire to consistent source of maybe frustration, right? Or the person that's like, oh, they're just not getting stuff done, or they're not doing it right. So what's probably true, not always, right? But far more than we admit to ourselves, is that you didn't invest in that good person when they arrived. You didn't give them the training that they needed, or challenge them on the behaviors you noticed that you wished that they would change. You didn't show them what the DNA of your business is through specific examples, so they could get a personal experience of what you mean by care and why they should care in the way that you do, right? Most importantly, you didn't hold them accountable in small increments. This is important, in small increments along the way, to give them boundaries around what needed to change and by when. Now, it's, this was big for me because like I can look back at examples of, where that happened. And it's painful looking back going like, oh man, I fucked up on that. But at the same time, understanding that that's true and how to do it better. So notice that, keeping people accountable and not letting standards go by the wayside, right? Because as soon as you end up, you have a vision, you have a values, and because it's uncomfortable, right? Either you're busy or it's confrontation is uncomfortable. So maybe that's the reason you avoid it. Or maybe you're really busy and it's like, oh, I'll get to that, right? But that's the most important thing. Remember, we just started off saying that the most important thing is developing, that your business is there for the development of the team, okay? And so this is massively crucial when you talk about this, right? Now, it doesn't, here's the thing, it doesn't make you an evil person, and you shouldn't use it as opportunity to punish yourself for all the mistakes you've ever made. That, in the past, that would have been something that I would do a lot of, and I've done a good job cutting down on that. Let's not do that. I invite you instead to be honest and real with how it's been so you can change it, okay? Basically, you're listening to this probably because, you want to stop leading / managing people the way that you have been. And awareness, remember, awareness precedes change. And this is awareness or sobriety. Sobriety is the first step. So let's just call this sobriety, right? So just know that when it comes to that very personal kind of, leader, manager engagement, we're kind of all B players. I think that's important. I know I got the most stuck when I believed, I was like, oh man, I'm really good at this, right? Or I'm an A player at this. And that was the beginning of the end, right? And every leader that I've met, including me, has a huge blind spot in this area. We all have the same one, though it comes in different forms. It's not being able to see how, by the very act of showing up the way that we do, we disempower the people around us, right? But that is until we learn how to get out of our own way. I'm going to repeat that because it's that powerful, okay? So It's not being able to see how, by the very act of showing up the way that we do, we disempower the people around us, right? When you disempower the people around you, then you have to start doing everything, and then you get pissed, and you're like, hey, they're not doing the stuff that they're supposed to be doing, right? So when you think about it, you start to see that there's no such thing as an A player. There's certainly people who have more talent than others, an extraordinary skill or a certain special, quality. But if you ever met somebody like that who didn't have an equally, if not larger, shadow aspect to working with them that was related to their strength, you probably have, right? So the first thing we have to do is recognize that we ourselves are not A players. We all have something that we're working on, something inside ourselves that makes us feel incompetent, unconfident, insecure, or all of those. Until we deal with our own internal world, and not by fixing it by being honest with ourselves and others about it, our strength will forever be used to perpetuate the false belief about our own authority that we started with, so that the other people value us for what we know and how many problems we can solve. Notice that, right? So when we do that, we keep trying to, I would say, show how valuable we are by the things that we do, and we end up solving all the stuff, right? And then we're so good at our things, and then we disempower people, and then we kind of get, all the stuff that we don't want, right? So if you think about it, it's like the self-fulfilling kind of prophecy in a negative way, but this is the beginning. The beginning is like this whole myth of I can't get good people. So, I guess that when you start accepting the B player in yourself, you'll stop looking at employees as not being good enough. And I hate the word employees, but that's what I got in my notes. But I would say our teammates. And you'll start realizing that no matter how skilled someone is, when they come in that door into your unique business, they're a B player. They don't understand your brand. They don't know how the way that you do it there. They don't know how to play with the people on your team, and they certainly don't know how to work with you. So it's your job to roll up your sleeves and work with them with whatever needs working on. And that is what's going to help people do great things, right? And here's the other part, right? Some people just won't make that pivot, and they'll leave, or you'll let them go, and that's okay too. But don't let it be because of those blind spots and not knowing that you're a B player and how to help them, right? So, great leadership and mentoring starts with an open mind and an open heart, and the question for you becomes, are you doing that? And being brutally honest with yourself about that. I'll pause there to drink my Bang, who's still not sponsoring, but it's okay. This leads us to myth number 2. And man, I think this might be the one that stands out the most, right? Funny thing is, I was just having a conversation yesterday, and somebody said this to me, and I stopped them because after, having this realization, I was like, well, yeah, that's kind of true, but not completely true. And myth number 2 is that nobody cares as much as I do. So that's what you'd say, right? Nobody cares as much as I do. Nobody cares as much as I do about this company, about this vision, about this mission. And so that may be true. Nobody cares about the things that you care about as much as you do. I think that's kind of, that's why it's so individual. But it's not true or fair or helpful. I think that's the most important part. It's not helpful to think that nobody cares as much as you. They care about different things that matter to them. Things that inspire and move them, that shift them, but they do care about something. So your job is to get the things you care about and the things they care about to match up in a way where everybody wins. Now, I've mentioned this before, this whole win-win scenario, and it's one thing to talk about this stuff, and it's another to look at every situation and be able to go okay, cool. Are they winning here and am I winning here? And I think there's a point in time when things get hard, and it's well, fuck it, I'm winning. Are they winning? Maybe not, but you know what? I'm winning. It's cool. And of course, because if you say I'm the owner, I'm the leader, I'm the whatever, this title is, and that's why it's cool, it's fine, right? For me to win, for them to lose, you won't have a successful team long term. And so that's why this is important, right? That you gotta match up in a way where everybody wins and what they care about, what you care about, do match up. So what are the things that, your team cares about? What if in the larger sense, they are the exact same things you care about? Creative freedom, personal meaning, doing work they love, and making enough money to support their families. I mean, I would say, isn't that what most of us, all of us connect to? So as we look across the leadership and management employee divide, it's easy to see the people on the other side as being made of a different stuff than we are, but they're not. They're just at a different stage. They have a different appetite for risk, perhaps, maybe. And, for whatever reason, they've decided to hitch the meaning wagon to yours, right? So it's your responsibility to discover just how much they care in ways and about things that you don't. So talk about the win-win scenario. Everything's going to keep bringing me back to a lot more conversations, right? So just know that all of these things come back to crucial conversations, which is a book that I mentioned before, how to better communicate in any relationship, whether it's, like I said, a team, employee, like personal, intimate, whatever it may be. So just remember, finding that point of win-win, and that starts eradicating kind of that part too, is they don't care as much as I do. Nobody cares as much as I do. Which brings us to myth number 3, which is I can't afford to invest time in someone who's just going to leave anyway. And before I even go into, I would say this kind of subject matter of this a little bit, I'll say this. I'll start with the quote that many years ago, me and Dax Moy were having a conversation, and somebody asked him and said, well, but why would I put all of this? I would invest all of this, that, and the other, because I had a bad experience. And trust me, I've had multiple, I said, negative experiences when it comes to, people leaving in non-ethical ways, inappropriate ways, so on and so forth, which, to be completely honest, looking back, many of the things that I did in my leadership was the catalyst for us. So it's always do not blame others. You can't blame others. People make their own decisions, and they're responsible for their decisions, and so I'm responsible for mine. So looking back, a lot of the learning in the realm of management and leadership and communication, I now see how many of the things that I could have done way better to prevent that. But I digress. Coming back to this. Well, somebody asked Dax Moy, man, why would I do all this and invest in all of them? He's like, what if I, do all that and they become so much better and then they leave? And Dax said, well, but what if you don't and they stay? And, that was this big light bulb moment for me. And if many of you know that, when it comes to continuing education and mentoring, and I don't say this arrogantly, I don't believe that there's any gym that does as much continuing education. I could probably factually prove that. But it started there, where it was just well, sure, there's always risks that come along with it, but man, I want to give my team the best, and so that they grow, they become the best at coaching and then everything else that's associated with that. And that's why we do so much continuing education. To the tune of 2018, we'll have 11 or 12 seminars / instats, which is external ones, which is pretty much one a month. That's not counting our own things, which is pretty massive, and we pretty much stay with that frequency. Now, with that said, to go back to this myth of I can't afford to invest time in someone who's just going to leave anyway. Let's dig into some of the subject matter here. Okay, so think about the person on your team who's having the most trouble right now. Let's take a moment. Or who maybe it's a person that's part of the team. Okay, now do a little math as to how much time you're already investing them, right? Add up all the times you've had to finish off their work that wasn't quite there, wasn't quite on point, or remind them about this, that, or the other thing, whatever that you had to keep bringing up. Please include the nightly conversations you're having with your spouse, your partner, your friends about it, the complaint sessions you're having with the rest of the team, your colleagues, the amount of time you lie awake at night in utter frustration that they didn't do this thing again. How many extra hours did you spend with them over the past month? 5, 10, too many to count? How about over the course of the last year? Okay, now add the value of that time that you can be spending doing the work that you were supposed to be doing. Think about that, right? So if you add it up, you'd probably realize that you spent 100 hours of your time with this person already. And if you look at what you've been doing during that time, you'll see that it's mostly not been mentoring or development. It's been supervision, or maybe even, the ruling with the iron fist and, trying to make them do something versus, mentoring and development. Yikes, right? That's some ugly shiz right there. When the awareness hits you and you go like, hey, you've been spending a lot of time and energy, but really not developing them. So that word should give you chills. Supervision is what, children need so they don't stick the finger in the socket. Not a good model for building a company and a culture for adults. And my thoughts around like kids and that we should be kid-like, but in this situation, we want a culture for adults, right? So, and we don't want supervision. So what if instead of the next 100 hours of supervision, you spend 10 hours having direct conversation with this team member about what's been going wrong, what your standards are, why they should care, how you're going to help them grow, and how you're going to hold them accountable for their growth. Like, do you feel better already just thinking about that? I mean, you're probably going to feel a little bit uncomfortable because, hey, having a tough conversation is uncomfortable, but you're still probably going to feel better. Like, man, I can resolve this. Think about it another way, right? Isn't not investing in them the surest way that they'll leave, or stay and drag other people down? And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with that, with Dax in that situation, right? So remember, not investing in them is the surest way that they'll leave or stay and drag other people down. Worst scenario. Sure, they're still there, right? But that's the worst scenario. And, I think, I might have talked about this in the last one, but like this proverb, it's an Arab proverb that I heard not long ago, and I'm like, oh man, this is powerful. And it says, it's better to have 1,000 enemies outside the tent than one inside the tent. And once again, like, if you get to the point where somebody's very, very unhappy and there's this confrontation and conflict that's not resolved and they become an enemy inside the tent, that's the worst thing that you can ever have in a company, in a team, in a business, in an organization, in a family, like anything. So just remember that, because that is death. So think of all the good things that will happen when you train and invest in that one person, right? Think of what it will mean to them as a human being. Like, that's what excites me when it comes to the team, right? Like, man, how can I help this person? Like from a standpoint of, like I said, personal, professional, but as a human being. Think of what it'll mean to them, to be the kind of human being who helps other human beings with hard things. I think that's like I would use that as a tagline. That's a great tagline. But on a serious note, like, think about that, right? Think of what it will mean to you to be the kind of human being who helps other human beings with hard things. Think about the message it sends to the other people on the team that you're willing to take that kind of a risk. Think about the people below that person or on an organizational chart, if that's the case, right? Who will benefit from the growth, even if the person does leave. So I would say this in a situation of gym owners, think about all the clients that benefit because you've helped that person grow as a human being and as a coach. There's no end to the potential benefits of investing in your team, but ultimately the most important benefit is this: it's the right thing to do. Period. And I know this sounds so cliche, right? But if you do the right things, sometimes the right things are unpopular things. But that's why, being a leader and taking all this responsibility is a tough thing. Okay? I mean, look, I keep going back to when I went to war, it's the throne analogy, right? Like, heavy lies, I'm gonna mess this one up, but heavy lies the crown. Yeah, there we go. Gene whispered it. But it's true though, right? Like, I mean, people want to have, I would say, some type of good authority and leadership and freedom, and we'll talk about the whole thing a whole another time, but don't want to wear that heavy crown, of responsibility. And that's what that is. That's what the crown is. It's responsibility that you can't hide from. And doing the right thing sometimes is unpopular, but it's the right thing, right? And what's right is right. It's one of the things that I live by and a value is like, hey, what's right is right. What's right is always right. And that brings us to myth number 4. which is great because we talk so much about coaching, right? But myth number 4 is like, I'm not a therapist. I don't have the skills to help them with their personal problems. Okay. So let's take a step back here. I got a question for you when it comes to this, because you may be thinking this, right? I don't know what setting you're in. This might be, you know what? Like, honestly, this may be a scenario for, you're at work and you work for a company, and you may not be the leader of the company or even the department, and you kind of like, well, this is out of my realm, right? Like, I'm not a therapist. I'm not supposed to do that. Well, let me ask you this, right? How many things have you tried to help you become a better leader, manager, an all-around effective person, right? Just an all-around human being, okay? How many things? How many consultants, coaches, how many self-improvement books, podcasts, and weekend workshops have you taken? Like, hey, listen, if you're listening to this right now, you're helping yourself improve. How many of those ideas have you tried to introduce into your team, your company, your culture? If you're reading this, chances are, or should I say, if you're listening to this, like notice how like I get lost in my notes sometimes. Chances are you decided a long time ago that, who you are and how you relate with your work is highly like relevant to your business. So you're obviously going out there and like learning these things so you can implement them. So you have a desire to be a better leader, a better communicator, a better coach, better salesperson, marketer. I mean, whatever the things that you're studying or trying to relate. Sometimes you go out there to learn stuff, so you more so for helping develop your team than you do for yourself, right? So it's obvious, right? And that your personal transformation would be good, not just for you, but for the people around you. I mean, most of the time, shit, like why did I go to certain things like, to Warrior and getting coaches and going to Tony Robbins stuff and like a million other things that I've done is a lot of times it's like, so I could be better for others. Sure, for myself, but man, I can't tell you how many things I've taken. I'm like, I want to be better for others. Because it matters, right? Because you care. If you're going for like how many people went into Warrior for like for improving themselves for their family, right? So just know that. Why doesn't the same hold true for everyone else in your business, right? Why? There's no reason. Like even if you're ready to acknowledge that your team's personal growth is relevant and will be good for your business, there's still this challenge. Like how do you broach? How do you step over that? Like how do you implement that subject, right? How do you have this more personal conversation without going beyond the bounds of the professional agreement that you have between employee, manager, once again leader, team team player, right? How do you do that? And of course that those are some of the kind of, I guess, challenging things sometimes, but like I've been sharing different simple methods about, and performance issues in a way that kind of intersects like beautifully with personal growth and challenges. And we talked about that with the coaching habit a couple shows ago, like the 7 questions and how you can implement them, whether it's performance coaching, whether it's development coaching, what that means and how you can implement that, right? So it's hard, but it doesn't put it off limit. It just means it's hard. And, I hope that you'll discover some of the things that I'm sharing you and be able to use those things inside of your business. Like I said, I share a lot of things that are related to like coaching in the sense of, we're all doing it every single day, whether it's with our, with kids, with teammates, colleagues, bosses, you name it, right? And so constantly like learning, and even if it's one like strategy, like one method that you've learned and picked up, and then the next day you're like, all right, I'm going to use this, right? I'm going to use this with Sally Sue here at work and see how this goes. And you get feedback. Maybe it's like it gets received really well, or maybe not. Whatever it may be, like you're going to get something out of it. But that's how you develop. Like you learn something, you apply it, you reflect on it, you course correct if need be, right? And then you repeat. Right. And so just know that, sure, like this stuff is hard. And a lot of times there's no pure system for it. And here's the cool thing. Like that's actually the last myth that I'm going to share today. But, that the people are always like, man, can you give me the system for that? And systems are important, but there's a human factor involved. And so, yes, this is hard. It's kind of gritty. It doesn't go by exactly step by step, which leads us to, Myth number 5, which is we just need better systems and more communication, right? Think about that. Like, hey, I can tell you, like in the last 3 weeks, I've had 4 phone calls where it's just like, we need better systems and better communication. Now, I do believe that communication is a really, really big bottleneck in most, I would say, organizations and relationships, period. And I continue talking about becoming a better communicator. Honestly, if you go back to the last 60 plus episodes, you'll notice that I keep bringing it up because it's that important. But we just need better systems and more communication is also a myth many times. And I've recognized that because after doing it, after improving systems and getting new systems and improving communication, sometimes there's still stuff that's not fixed. So just remember that systems, processes, and action plans and procedures are great things. They're wonderful, right? And needed, right? They're necessary in creating a minimum amount of order and predictability to your business. But ask yourself this, because I certainly had to, and like that's why I have it down here, like written down, because I was realizing this and recognizing this and going like, holy shit, like, yeah, I've like we've done this a lot. Meaning, how many systems do you have right now? How many hard and so-called soft documents have you written over the years with big promises as to what they were going to deliver? From vision documents to brand positions to marketing strategies to value propositions to onboarding, step by step to checklists for cleaning the gym to contacting clients to like this, that, and the other, right? And have any of them honestly done even a bit to get people to take real ownership of their work? Now that's the key question, right? The systems and all this stuff are there, right? Maybe they're not, and you need to work on them. But nonetheless, like if whatever system you've had, did any of that make people take real ownership of their work? So systems are not the solution to people problems. They're absolutely the answer to system problems, though. So maybe you do have a system problem. I don't know, man. Like maybe you do have to implement systems or better systems or newer systems, right? But it won't help if you have a people problem. So the key is to know the difference. And I love this analogy. Like, so when an athlete breaks their leg, like you put it in a cast to help restore structure stability for the bone to, the bone density come back to heal. But to support them through the emotions of the fall and help them to get back up again. What about that? For that, you need a whole other type of medicine, right? And so there's a distinct difference there where one might be a system thing, and one might be a people thing and how you communicate with them and treat them and support them and guide them through this process, right? Even though you got the system there, it doesn't mean that they're going to recover and grow the way that you would hope to just by giving them like, oh, just you're going to do this and that's that, right? So based on all these things and these myths, okay, let's make a new set of operating assumptions, right? And they're not the opposite of the myths that were hopefully just, debunked and that have created awareness in your life and yourself. And I would hope that, you catch yourself saying these things. You might have a conversation next week. Well, nobody cares as much as I do. And then you go like, oh, hold up. I listened to that podcast with Luka and maybe I need to catch myself here, right? And find out what they care about and that they do care about, right? So just remember, they may not be the opposite of what we just debunked, but a reframe that allows us to approach the growth conversation with the honesty, and nuance that I guess we all deserve, not just you or me, but everybody, right? I can't find good people becomes I can't know who my A players are until I challenge them to find out, okay? How do we reframe the second myth? Nobody cares as much as I do becomes I haven't figured out how they care in their own way that can harmonize with the way that I do or that the company does. The third one, I can't afford to invest time in someone who's just going to leave anyway becomes I don't have time to do anything else but develop them. I'm not a therapist. I don't have the skills to help them with the personal problems becomes I'm not a therapist, but I'm steps ahead of this person as a professional and can help them grow by sharing the things I've learned along the way. And last but not least, we just need better systems and more communication becomes we don't need more communication. We need to start speaking a different language. So just imagine if you, just for a moment, that you were to start living into these new, let's call them assumptions, bit by bit, a little more each day. How do you think things will work out? How do you think your company could change? How would you change? Because you'd have to become more, obviously, to help your people become more. And then who would you want to go talk to first? Who would you want to go talk to first? I think that's a powerful question. Maybe as you were listening to this, you're like, oh man, I got to talk to XYZ. Okay, as soon as you get off of this, do that. Right? Do that, and then guess what? You'll start changing that assumption, and then you'll start changing your team. And know that it's a process. Like, know that it's not, like I said, we talked about, how do you, for instance, somebody, breaks a leg, and the doctor will say, hey, like, it's going to be, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks for the leg to heal, and then some rehab, and right, they give you some timelines. But with the emotional part of things, with the human part of things, it's difficult to say. Like, think about, trauma, and I've been around a lot of it, and also around a lot of people that have had much worse trauma than I had, but from a sense of, how does anybody give you a timeline on how you heal? Oh, well, listen, you've had this abuse, and you'll be good in 12 months. No, it doesn't work that way, right? So understand that, like, changing things such as, I would say, team culture and helping people personally and professionally grow, it's all you can do is focus on the process of it, right? You focus on the process, and the things usually start changing faster, certainly faster than if you just focus on the outcome. And, and that goes for everything. We've talked about that in nutrition. We're talking about it now in leadership and in management and in, communication. And with that said, once again, like, who's the person you're going to have a conversation with, and how are you going to approach this differently? If you have had an aha moment, like even just one in this episode, then it's time for you to go and change something and apply something, so that things become better. And remember, like, everybody is a coach, and you don't need, one of my favorite books too is Leader with No Title from Robin Sharma, which is one of the reading curriculums for our internship program, where, leader is, you become a leader by the behaviors that you elicit, right? So when you start looking, leaders create more leaders. They don't create followers. That's another thing that I truly believe in. And so helping people kind of create leadership behaviors, one, it starts with you, but that is the goal. And so go do something, right? Take an action step and lead. With that said, I love and appreciate you guys for tuning in and spending your time with me and listening to my, like I said, rantings and thoughts and insights. And thank you for sharing, because like I said, like, I love it when we get the reviews, and please, really appreciate you for sharing and going and writing that 5-star review on iTunes, because more and more people are being able to listen to this and get something from it and actually making a positive change from it. So I thank you for that. I will see you in the next episode of the Vigor Life podcast. See you soon.